Hey everyone, happy, I think it's Wednesday. Hope you're having a good week. I wanted to jump into a couple things and end on a uh, definitely a positive note. Um, but we're kind of gearing up for these midterms, and I think it's good to look at some things that may or may not determine the outcome. One of those things, right? Like there is a lot of talking heads out there. uh, talking about, oh, Trump's not coming through on his promises and he's not doing this, he's not doing that. Well, and then they look at like, oh, he's distracted with Iran and he's distracted with foreign policy stuff. Meanwhile, um, ICE is setting record immigration arrests for July last month. You see Bobby Kennedy uh, out touting, you know, availability for drugs get released for soldiers going through PTSD. You have so much stuff out there that's going on. It's kind of like it's definitely difficult. You get kind of lost in the noise, and you lose sight. Like just because the news is deciding to spend all its time talking about, let's say, foreign policy, doesn't mean that all of the domestic agenda items aren't being addressed. Now, I will admit that the gas price situation is definitely an issue. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Um, it is what it is. But the thing that I think is good to put in perspective, and this goes into just the economy in general, is that when Biden was president, there were people screaming from the rooftops about the cost of gas because of the policies that he rolled in that ultimately skyrocketed prices over a period of time, which was essentially actually it's 1 month shy of the amount of time that prices have been up since the Iran war. So prices started to go up in February. Prices skyrocketed starting in uh, actually they started 2 months earlier. I take that back. So it's slightly longer period of time of exposure. But I think the thing to look at is this, right? Like, while we all were talking about the impact of these high gas prices, both in price at the pump for both regular unleaded cars or regular gas cars and diesel, we were also talking about the massive amount of inflation that was happening. And that was over a much longer sustained period of time. And so again, I've talked about this before, but gas prices now are not as high as they were under Biden, and it's been for a less period of time. Yet the news wants to make it out as if, oh my God, it's the end of the world right now. And that is because most of the news sources are left leaning. So you go from this Fox News essentially, and maybe Newsmax and OAN. Um, you know, Not many people watch OAN or Newsmax, not as many as Fox. But so you have Fox, that's the only one out there that's getting a lot of airplay, or has a lot of viewers, I should say, that's talking about, hey, gas prices are high and inflation is crazy. And then you have the entire left media coming out and gaslighting everybody and saying, don't believe your lying eyes. The prices aren't that bad. Inflation isn't real. It's only transitory. And gas prices are fine. Like they're absolutely fine. Meanwhile, the same thing happens under Trump for a smaller period of time, and all of the left wing media is coming out, and all of the left wing pundits are coming out and talking about inflation, the cost of goods, and this, that, and the other. And it hasn't even been that long of a period of time. I mean, you can look at any chart and see that higher prices were sustained over Joe Biden's presidency. Inflation was significantly higher. Gas prices were higher on average. And so it's just like, a lot of people are talking about the economy. I think also a lot of people are smart and they're looking at it and going, yeah, and prices aren't going up as fast as they were going up under Joe Biden. And that's what we want. You can't have negative, like it's just not going to happen. Prices aren't going to crater and go down. There's still demand for goods. What you want is to reduce the amount at which goods prices are going up, which is reducing the rate of inflation, which Trump is doing. Nobody can argue that Trump's inflation rate, even with all this stuff going on in Iran, is significantly lower than inflation under Joe Biden. Significantly lower. And so I just, again, there's other stuff that's going on, and there's a lot of coverage of the Iran war. There's a lot of coverage of like Israel this and Israel that. There's actually very little coverage, interestingly enough, of the Ukraine war, which I find very interesting. Um, and there's very little coverage of China's moves in the AI space. And so, like what you have is like a lot of focus on innovation in the US and stymieing innovation. You have a lot of focus on the fact that prices are high today, when they were high, much higher, under Joe Biden, at the rate at which they rose under Joe Biden. And the same thing with gas and all this other stuff. And so I think a lot of people are smart, um, and they're starting to see through this. There's going to be a lot of money, by the way, thrown into the elections, which is something I want to get into, specifically in Alaska, Texas, Michigan, uh, Iowa, not so much, but North Carolina and Georgia. Now, interestingly enough, they've already gone and written North Carolina and Georgia off, most polls, and I think that's fair. I think North Carolina is going to be interesting to see it play out, but I live in the world of realism. And so I look at, okay, what is the likelihood of flipping Alaska? Pretty slim. What is the likelihood of flipping Texas? I would say sometime in the next decade, there will be a Democrat, senator. Um, it's just numbers, right? You have all of these liberals moving out of California and Oregon and other states with highly repressive laws and regulations, um, and high taxes, and now they're all moving to like Texas, and Tennessee and Florida and North Carolina and whatever, and they're not voting any different, which is, by the way, the most absurd thing ever. But flipping Texas at this point in time, I think, is a stretch. And I'll get into the polls. Iowa is red. Iowa is not going blue. Michigan up for grabs. Ohio, up for grabs. I would say Ohio is probably leaning red. Maine is interesting. We'll see how that plays out. And interestingly enough, New Hampshire, their claiming is light blue, by the way. Um, it's possible that Sununu, could win. But at any rate, if we're just looking at the polls are like all over the place. And so you've got, Rogers winning in two out of the, seven polls here. You have a tie and then three leading polls for El Sayed. Now, the polls are tightening substantially now that, the primaries are done. If you look at August, it's like, okay, you've got polls all over the place, +3, +7, +1. Okay. Uh, how are you supposed to judge based off of the spread in those polls? And then you have a Rogers +4. And then going into the end of July, you have a Rogers +3. So like I would say Michigan is still kind of out there for grabs. A lot of money is going to be thrown into Michigan. You have Texas, and again, I find these polls interesting. Again, you have +3, +2, +4, +3. Those are fine. Then you have a +6, and it's like, all right, well, where did that come from? You have, Paxton in the same period of time, or roughly just before that period of time, +1. But leading into, kind of the primaries, you had Paxton +1 and a tie. Um, I'm almost positive that, Tallarico will not end up winning in Texas. The amount of money that Elon Musk's PAC is going to be throwing into Texas is going to be insane. They're going to hold that seat, and it's going to be a well fought and tough fought win for Paxton. That's just my That's just my 2 cents. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Again, you look at these polls coming out of New Hampshire. You have a UNH poll +2 for Sununu. You have a St. Anselm poll with a +7 for Pappas. How are you supposed like the spread in those polls is absurd. Which polls should you take seriously? Don't know. Is the St. Anselm poll just like one of those polls that we created to put out there to see if it actually changed the course of the election? Like another pollster that came out that was doing polls in Michigan and other places, specifically for DSA candidates. Like it's difficult to read that one. I would say New Hampshire, based on the current polling, just in August alone, is a toss-up. You have a +2 for Sununu and a +7 for Pappas. Like is you really can't determine there. Alaska is interesting because they've they tried to cheat and run another Dan Sullivan, um, other to essentially dilute the votes for Dan Sullivan. I'm going to go out on a limb and go ahead and say that Republicans will hold Alaska. It's just it's not happening. It's not happening. Peltola ran before, lost. I don't see Alaska going Democrat. Also based on the population of people that live there. Ohio, if I had to look at the polls, I would say Ohio's going red. I mean, just based on the polls. Look at the recent polls. You have Brown up +8. You have the last one that was done by New York Times Siena, which is a pretty good poll, which had Husted up by 3. Like again, we'll see how that one works out. Again, the polling is going to start to tighten as we get closer to November. A lot of money's going to be thrown at that race. Iowa, obviously red. The fact, like, I was watching, I think it was MSNBC. They were talking about the different races that were going to be run, and they had Iowa like up. It was like a toss up, and I was like, "What are you smoking?" Like Iowa is a red state. Hinson is winning Iowa. Um, and like I follow the polls and I'm like, it's just it is what it is. But I wanted to um end on this. And I want to play a segment which I saw the other day. Um, there are very few celebrities today. Or I'll take a step back. There was a point in time where celebrities there wasn't social media. Everything was kind of curated, and the publicity of stars was very, very slim. You'd have to read tabloids, or you'd have to read People magazine or Teen magazine for those that grew up in the 80s. You'd have to go to these places to find these people, and the TV appearances were only on places like Johnny Carson in this video, um, or you had the people that were on late night TV in the 80s, 90s, and then leading into the early 2000s. And this is where celebrities like musicians got seen, and that's where you got to hear what they were saying. Um, I'll also say this: the celebrities that grew up, um, I would say like the Dolly Parton types, the ones that grew up came up through fame through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, tended to have extremely humble beginnings. Um, and like these people, like you would look at them and see their story. You're like, grew up in the country, working class family, like, you know, like a real struggle, came from like super low income and ultimately ended up making it. And you can see this, by the way, with Prince. You can see it with Michael Jackson. Like the Jackson's parent, specifically father, um, wasn't necessarily a wealthy guy, but he saw talent in his kids and drove that talent to change their lives. You can see this in a lot of actors that came up. especially the actors that came up through that all came out of like I would say the World War II class and like the Vietnam or the Korean War and Vietnam era. They all served um, because they had to. Uh, there was a time where they had the draft and you had to serve, and so even Elvis had to do his time. And it was a different kind of celebrity. They were a little more rugged. They had super humble beginnings, but ultimately their story was one of like the American success story. Um, Now you have a lot of celebrities that come up through money, and so they never really had to work hard. Not to say that they aren't working hard to maintain their celebrity status at this point, but you just see so much of them that they don't have the same kind of feel that celebrities did prior to the internet age. Um, Again, they had very manicured and curated, appearances. You didn't know everything about their life unless it was showing up in a tabloid, like they were getting divorced, or maybe a celebrity assaulted another one, like Sean Penn and Madonna, back in the day when they were dating. But like it was like you looked at celebrities as they were like on a different planet, and you wanted to like aspire to be them, and you saw them and their story as something that that you that would ultimately drive you, right? And ultimately reminded you that like you can make it if you put forth the effort and you work hard, like good things will happen to you. But with that, I will play this and then we'll do a peace out.
That's how we are.
Yeah. What's the song you said you made up?
Well, I wrote this song because it's been real good for me ever since I started on your show. And
Yeah.
you said one time, once I got to be real famous, I probably wouldn't come back on the show, but I always will. I'm here about as much as you are.
Good friends can say that.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. We can say anything. But I was only kidding because everybody kids you about it.
Yeah.
I only like the show. Well, I think other people do a good job, but I only really like to watch it when you're on.
Thank you.
And I don't call it the Tonight Show. To me, it's the Johnny Carson show.
You're saying
So,
all right.
no, I'm serious. So,
You want me to hold that for you?
no, I'm going to kick it a little. As good as I can with the snails. But it's all in the words, and it's, I think it is. Now, it's not supposed to be too serious, so. I have come a long way from the hills of Tennessee, and I've worked hard to make the folks back home real proud of me. Now everybody knows my name, no matter where I go, but I never really made it till the Johnny Carson show. I have dreamed of stardom since I was just a kid. $1 million dream beneath this $13 wig. In my bell-bottom jumpsuits with my rhinestones all aglow, I became an overnight success from the Johnny Carson show. From polyester paradise to silk and satin frills, from a 48-foot mobile home to a mansion on the hill, from moonshine to rare wine, from a Packard to a Rolls, but I never really made it till the Johnny Carson show. Now there's only one small problem. Sometimes I get disturbed. The folks sometimes get me confused with Monty Rock III. But still I think it's worth it, and I just thought you should know that I'll always owe a special thanks to the Johnny Carson show. I went from pop beads to diamonds, from car coats to fur, from Kmart to Gucci's, from here no telling where, from hillbilly heaven to a penthouse on the coast, but I never really made it till the Johnny Carson show.